Greetings, Guardians, my name is Byfear. So, the Ghosts of the Deep dungeon is a major narrative point in Destiny's history. I know I talked a little bit before about the idea of a good narrative in a wider context of a world and how it has the potential to create these knock-on effects as the dominoes fall over and affect the world around it. Ghosts of the Deep very much does this, and the first moment at which we can start to see it is when we look at the armor for the dungeon and the lore that's presented there. This armor chronicles a story about a few hidden agents, Destiny's guardians within that circle of super spies that are responsible for all the unseen work that keeps many dangers away from the Lost City. A lot of their work is pretty clandestine, and honestly, some of it is very taboo. Their dealings often fall on the side of having to choose the lesser of two evils in order to keep people safe, or having to engage in something that's a little bit otherworldly or eldritch, or even just out there and uncomfortable in order to prevent even worse things from happening. This mission, being conducted by the hidden agents Fenchurch Everis, Chalco, and Lisbon III, is something that seemingly falls into that category of things that are very much unsettling but being done for the greater good. To provide a little context, these three hidden agents are all intriguing in their own rights, and before we go over the story told in the lore of the armor, I think I should go over them really first. So, they have a great deal of combined experience when it comes to dealing with unsettling things, but all of them have it for different reasons. Chalco is one of Ikora's closest friends and is the fireteam leader for this operation. She's one of the hidden that Ikora previously trusted with deeper investigations into Stasis, the Darkness, and even a few of the Guardians that have fallen to its corruption. Whilst Arnor may be the scything guillotine sent out by Ikora to execute those who have become dangerous, Chalco is more of the measured detective who watches and waits for transgressions to be made clear and then allows others to act on her good information. Fenchurch Everis is well known for the economic success of his niece Tess, but his experience with the darker parts of the system should not be underestimated. He's got something like 24 different stories about encounters that he's seen, and rumor has it he's even been inside the Traveler, whatever that means. He was one of the first people to learn about a sortie conducted by Eris Morn and Mara Sov against the Pyramid Fleet, all the way out on the dead planetoid of Eris. Yes, same name as Eris Morn. That freaked her out much more than it should freak you out. He learned this after making contact with a ritually imbibed material that Eris had deposited within a hive thrall, and then sent out as a contingency should her and Mara be unable to escape their current conditions that they found themselves in. Fenchurch has seen enough of the darkness of the hive to understand how deep their madness can truly run. Lisbon 13, on the other hand, has had an experience with darkness of a much more primal and terrifying nature. By far the most fascinating of the three, Lisbon was once a member of a rogue fire team called the Kentarch III. They explored the Black Garden at the behest of a group known as the Cryptocrons, and had encountered what is presumably the Witness, based on the descriptions given. It's only because of the Altars of Reflection and the power of Deep Sight that the Exo here even remembers that one of the ones he betrayed was one that he previously used to love. All of this is a complex tale in its own, but Lisbon is well versed in things to do with the darkness. These three hidden agents would be tasked with an operation to investigate Oryx's remains and would embark on an Elixni submersible and travel downwards towards the site of the taken king's body. They did not know what they were recovering at first, but their preparations for such a moment were not made lightly. Chalco, as the fireteam leader, was the one in the know, and she is the one who really begins our story with her instructions to the other fireteam members. Keep this talisman on you at all times. Black, glossy, and in the right light, the talisman has a rainbow iridescence. It reminds Fenchurch of the hematite pearls from the Bay of Drowned Wishes. He rolls it in his hand, looking up at Chalco to see the creases of worry in her brow. Fenchurch clips the talisman to his jacket as the rest of the fireteam has. What's it do? If it glows white, stay where you are and call out, Chalco explains, choosing her words carefully, all while avoiding Fenchurch's gaze. If you experience any memory loss or sense of déjà vu, call out. A silence falls over her fireteam. Palpable tension fills the cabin as they feel the craft beginning to descend. If you see anyone at the operation site that you do not recognize, call out. Chalco continues, occasionally steadying herself with a hand on the cabin ceiling as the submersible pitches and yaws in the disruptive currents. If you experience any out-of-body sensation or missing time, call out. Ma'am. Lisbon 3 is not afraid to interrupt Chalco. His eyes glow bright from the back of the submersible. Where are we going? Chalco stares for a moment, squares her shoulders, and continues. If you hear a voice that you think is your own, I have to presume that ends with call out. Chalco's caginess and the precautions being taken ahead of this operation would have been ample enough warning to the other two hidden agents that there would be nothing mundane about what they were about to do. The submersible descending into Titan's ocean depths that bore them towards their destination was equally a clue. As the submersible reached the sea floor, the mission would truly begin, and the long march through the dark twilight would start as well. A compact submersible of Elixni design finishes its descent through the hazy depths of Titan's methane ocean. The craft's seafloor landing kicks up a cloud of dark silt and microbial life shimmering like stars. The submersible's dorsal airlock cracks open with a rush of bubbles, then slowly folds down into a ramp, allowing a trio of figures armored in deep diving gear to emerge. The submersible's single floodlight sweeps across the ocean floor, revealing the alien landscape of twisting coral. Fenchurch approaches one of the coral growths, running a gloved hand over its surface. These polyps, he muttered. Is this? He stops suddenly at the sound of a mechanical snap and turns to see Chalco and Lisbon 13 plant a large mechanical spire in the ground. Internal lights flicker on as the spire whirs to life, creating a regulated field of water pressure around the submersible. Fenchurch steps away from the coral, rubbing his fingers together. He looks to the spire as its sides open like a flower and release several drones, each outfitted with floodlights. The drones swim out ahead, revealing the disorienting flicker of what looks like the water's surface, but at an impossibly vertical angle. This way, Chalco directs, as she turns to follow the drones. Fenchurch and Lisbon look at one another, steady themselves, and fall in line behind the fireteam leader. Stop me if you've heard this one before, Fenchurch says, anxiously checking the talisman clipped to his armor. 2 hunters and a warlock walk into the deep. It should be noted that what Fenchurch is probably about to point out about the coral is its similarity to egregore, and he would be correct. It's worth noting as well that if you actually go through the dungeon and look down into the horrifying depths below the encounter zone, just before you actually reach the hive ship, you can see egregore fronds growing upwards, just like they would have on the Glycon or on the Drifter's ship. This is no coincidence, and I think the actual reason why they're here is pretty simple. Egregore grows from dead matter and dead flesh and dead tissue, and in order for it to grow in abundance, as is found with the coral, down in Titan's depths, well, you need to have something dead. You need a lot of dead matter for it to be able to establish itself. It makes me wonder, is all of the dead matter that we've been picking up this season, or at very least the dead matter that we've been able to gather from within the dungeon and around that area, is it all there because that's where Oryx's body landed? If so, wow, that's a scary development, and goodness, terrifying to think of coincidences like that. Eventually, though, after a very short trek across the ocean floor, the fireteam would make its way to that wall of vertical water, and they would find the site at which the body could be found. Here, the perspective of the mission would become clear and terrifying, and both Lisbon 13 and Fenchurch would suddenly be clued in on the real happenings that were going on. Chalco Yong disappears behind the shimmering curtain of surface tension. Lisbon 13 follows without hesitation, leaving Fenchurch to stare at the vertigo-inducing vertical plane of water. He reaches out, hesitantly touching the surface, only for Lisbon to reach back, grab him by the wrist, and yank him through. "Everis," Lisbon mutters once he pulls Fenchurch to the other side. The warlock doesn't even realize he's hyperventilating. "Get it together." He gives Fenchurch a warning look, then nods at Chalco, walking ahead across the maddeningly dry ground. It takes Fenchurch a moment to realize that he's not underwater anymore. Liquid methane drips off his suit and turns to ice when it hits the compacted silt. The cavernous space is suffocatingly dark. It will be hours yet before the sun rises on this section of Titan, yet the lambent shades of starlight twinkling in the void beyond filled Fenchurch with a lurching sense of dread. He wants to ask, "Where are we?" but the words fail to get past his lips. Instead, Fenchurch gathers himself and joins Chalco at her side. Chalco raises her hand, and 3 drones come to heel behind her. "We are the only extant team of Hidden to visit this site." She sends the drones up into the air with a wave. "What you are about to see is not to be discussed outside of official reports." Fenchurch takes a step forward, squinting against the dark, until the drones sweep the terrain with their floodlights. Then, as the alien landscape comes into sharp focus, one word finally escapes his lips. Oryx. For obvious reasons, an elite and dependable fire team has been sent to accomplish this task of recovering Oryx's remains and investigating them thoroughly. With that in mind, the parameters of secrecy have been made clear, and the reasons for them are blaringly obvious. Word of the Hidden containing even fractions of Oryx's remains within the city or at a secure site where people would be able to access them more easily would be enough information to drive the citizens of the lost city into a panicked frenzy. Even more disturbing is the idea and knowledge that the Lucent Brood attempted to return the Taken King to life with the power of the light, and that would probably be even more troubling, especially given that the trust of the citizens of the lost city in the light and the Traveler is probably at an all-time low. To sit there and see the Taken King, one of our greatest foes, returned potentially with the power of the light would be devastating to city morale, and it would also place a very firm moniker on the Guardians and prove that maybe they were not good simply because they wielded the light. This is an operation that requires the utmost discretion. Chalco, Lisbon, and Fenchurch get to work, but not before a few questions are asked. What appears to be a silhouette of coral growths in the dark is revealed to be the mountainous remains of Oryx, the Taken King. The Hive God's immense carcass lays strewn across Titan's seafloor. Both Lisbon 13 and Fenchurch are taken aback by the sight, but Chalco advances toward it. The Lucent Brood performed a ritual here. Chalco motions to the shattered remnants of a Hive ghost on the ground. We believe they were trying to forcibly resurrect Oryx by combining heretical Hive necromancy with the powers of that ghost. They were disrupted. Lisbon steps forward, unable to look away from Oryx's cadaverous face. Is that possible? Officially, no. Unofficially, Chalco glances at Lisbon. That's what we're here to investigate. The body is still active, with taken energy and darkness. The Guardians who intercepted this ritual reported finding free-roaming fragments of consciousness on the way to this site, memories from the corpse. It's alive? Fenchurch whispers, hesitant to approach Oryx's remains. Chalco shakes her head. That's unclear. We need to bring back samples for further analysis. Ikora wants this entire site quarantined and the body exhumed, pending transport to a secure location for further analysis. Fenchurch checks his talisman. Still black. He glances between Chalco and the corpse. Are we the first team to come down here? Chalco looks at Fenchurch, then down to the ground. Her gaze lingers for a moment in tense silence. Finally, she fixes her gaze ahead to the corpse. We are the only extant team of Hidden to have visited this site. For those that didn't catch Chalco's drift there, extant means surviving. That means that there may have been a team that ran ahead of their team that reached the site, conducted a mission, and didn't finish it because they died. So, no pressure for Fenchurch and Lisbon and Chalco, only the impending doom potentially from sitting around this body. The final entry in this particular series of lore is actually a hidden dossier or two. It's originally from Fenchurch, and it is Fenchurch's recommendations about the site and Oryx's corpse. It also has an addendum sent by Chalco. Undoubtedly, this is merely for archival purposes, but you can also bet that various characters such as Eris Morn and Ikora Rey would have had access to this and would have read it. More importantly though, it contains a lot of hidden code, and it breaks down into letters and numbers. A lot of it is quite simple to parse out. OTK 300, for example, probably stands for Oryx Taken King, whereas there are a few identifier codes which are a little bit trickier to parse out. The one that I am going to make reference to here, because I don't actually know it for certain, is NEV000. I'm not immediately certain of what that one means, but my best guess is that it represents Neomuna Vale. But again, I'm not sure. If anyone has a better idea, let me know. For the time being though, the report from Fenchurch and the addendum by Chalco reads as follows. Access restricted. Report number 003 taken 156. Agents Fenchurch 092. Subject Taken King Oryx analysis notes. Spectrological analysis indicates concentration of taken energy within the cellular structure of the subject's remains. Resonance indicative of active darkness presence lacking both direction and willpower. Cellular analysis indicates slow but active mitosis, explaining the exaggerated size of the remains when compared to the subject's last known physical dimensions. The mind is gone, but the body continues to grow. Comparative analysis, 2 samples with remains of subject Witch Queen Savathun do not match. Witch Queen Savathun shows no signs of mitosis, may be a compounding effect from worm severance and exposure to light. Autopsy revealed no presence of worm carcass within Taken King Oryx remains. Status unknown. Prolonged exposure to Taken King Oryx causes vivid audio-visual hallucinations due to combined exposure to Taken and darkness energies. Eris Morn 223 notes similarities to object of interest Crown of Sorrows. Catalogued recollections from initial Guardian fireteam exposed to site indicate war god Xivu Arath frequently visited the remains to grieve. Taken King Oryx is capable of absorbing knowledge and events, but incapable of reacting to them. It is my professional recommendation that the remains of Taken King Oryx should be destroyed. It poses a threat to the safety of humanity, far outweighing any potential knowledge value. Message ends. Access restricted. Report 003, taken 156. Agent Chalco 319. Subject forward. Taken King Oryx analysis notes. Attached to Fenchurch 092's analysis are quarantine recommendations from Eris Morn 223, and my own analysis of object NEV000 for comparison to Taken King Oryx. My recommendation is as follows. Reclassify persons of interest to segment queries, quarantine remains to off-site location, and limit direct exposure to frames and mechanical intelligence. There is too much value here to simply throw away. Message ends. So there's a lot to unpack there, that's for certain, but let's start with the most concerning bit of all. Oryx's body isn't quite as dead as we might want it to be. It is dead, but not so dead that it seemingly can't absorb information from events and whatever happens in proximity to him. His body is still growing and his cells are still filled with Taken and darkness energy. He is unable to react to his surroundings and his worm is nowhere to be found, but Oryx still lives in a certain sense of it all. What's even more terrifying is that Oryx is still the originator of the calcified fragments. It means that even now, when Oryx is dead, he's having some kind of tangible effect on the world, even if it's more of a reflexive thing. The knowledge that we find in the calcified fragments throughout the dungeon is all from Xivu Arath, but it's there in the first place because unintentionally Oryx has absorbed it, because she's visited so frequently, and as a result, the memories of Xivu Arath have been made manifest, and all of that still originates from the Taken King. These calcified fragments, in that sense, are just like the old ones. Even scarier, though, is the potential fate of the first fire team. Fenchurch notes that the fire team who visited the site before them apparently suffered through similar hallucinations to those who encountered the Crown of Sorrows. Not exactly promising when you remember what happened to Galran. The crown was placed upon his head, and then he was completely possessed, overtaken by all of the energies and darkness of Savathûn at the time, an overwhelming influence, something that could potentially control him. It makes you wonder what truly happened to that other fire team. The first fire team's fate is known, it's seemingly the case that they're dead, and Chalco seems to be very cagey because it seems as though she knows a little bit more as to how they died. She's not telling. One also can't help but wonder what particular properties of the Crown of Sorrow have been replicated by Oryx's body. Is it simply the ability to harbor memories, nightmares, and dark energy? Or is it something else? I personally hope that it's tied more into the memory side of things, and that's more for all our sakes. Because the Crown of Sorrows is a terrifying artifact with some really scary abilities. Remember that Calus used it to contact the Witness, filled it with a bunch of dead scorn, experimented with it, and ripped a hole into reality, pulling the Glykon into a darkness anomaly. The Crown of Sorrow can do some scary things, and if Oryx's body is giving off similar energy, yeah, we need to be very careful with it. Fenchurch's recommendation was to basically go around all of this by immediately destroying the body. Chalco, however, would make the recommendation to contain the body and continue to study it under controlled conditions, especially after her analysis of object NEV-000. As I said earlier, I think that's the Veil, but I don't know that for sure. It's possible there is another object that I'm just forgetting about that hits the NEV descriptor a little bit better. Can you think of anything that might be? If you can, let me know in the comments, because I think it's the Veil, but I'm not sure, and Hidden Identifier Code has left me with moments where I've been incorrect before. The fact that Oryx's body and potentially the Veil have some similarities is... I mean, yeah, if that is what NEV-000 is, then we need to remember that, because that tells us a lot more about the Veil. However, the bigger part of all this is the fact that the body should be quarantined, and that Chalco and Eris's recommendation is to do that instead of destroy it. We have literally found the body of the Taken King, which, as we now know, is essentially a massive ticking time bomb. It's still growing, it can still essentially transmit information in certain ways, it's filled with Taken and Darkness energy, and it's not completely dead. We have a massive ticking time bomb on our hands, and we've decided to put it in a box and forget about it. We've not disarmed the bomb. That's probably the scariest thing to take away from all of this. Will this be relevant in the future? I absolutely believe it will be. There is no way that Bungie drops something as crucial as this and then doesn't do something about it in the future. I think it would just be worth remembering this for the times when it does come up. We will at some point encounter Oryx's body, I am sure. It will be a relevant plot point, and when we do, let's just hope that it isn't a point at which the facility where it's being contained is being raided, because if it is being stolen, then there is no telling what could happen. My final questions to all of you are as follows. Would you have kept the body, or would you have destroyed it? And what do you think NEV-000 stands for? Let me know down below in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, you can also leave a like, and of course if you want more Destiny content, go ahead and hit subscribe, and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. But as per usual, know that your viewership as always is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Perodacia ad Astra. I'll see you Starside.